You did not choose your fears. You did not choose what feels safe. You did not choose the version of yourself you default to under pressure. Yet those patterns run your life with mechanical precision. Long before you could speak in full sentences, before memory formed narratives, before identity had a name, rules were written into you. Not on paper, not in language, but into your nervous system. Invisible childhood scripts. They decide what love feels like, what danger feels like, what success feels like, whether rest feels earned or forbidden. And most importantly, they decide who you believe you are allowed to be. This is not metaphor. This is psychology, neuroscience, and developmental conditioning operating below awareness. And until these scripts are made visible, you will confuse conditioning for personality. A childhood script is not a memory. It is a patterned survival strategy learned before conscious reasoning existed. The child does not ask, "What do I want? What is fair? What is true?" The child asks only one question: what must I become to stay safe, connected, and allowed? From that question, scripts emerge. If love was unpredictable, the script becomes vigilance. If approval was conditional, the script becomes performance. If emotions were ignored, the script becomes self-erasure. If anger was dangerous, the script becomes compliance. These are not choices. They are adaptations. And adaptations, once successful, do not turn themselves off. A child cannot leave. A child cannot negotiate power. A child cannot reality check adults. So the nervous system adapts inward. The child's brain prioritizes attachment, survival, belonging. Truth comes last. If a parent is emotionally absent, the child does not conclude, "My caregiver is limited." The child concludes, "I must be the problem." This is the origin of shame, not as emotion, but as identity. And once identity forms around survival, it becomes invisible to the person living inside it. Most people operate from a blend of 4 primary scripts. 1. I am loved when I am useful. The child learns value through service, achievement, or emotional caretaking. Adult outcome: overfunctioning, burnout, guilt during rest, attraction to emotionally needy partners. 2. My needs are dangerous. The child learns that expressing needs causes conflict or withdrawal. Adult outcome: emotional suppression, passive resentment, difficulty receiving help, sudden emotional shutdowns. 3. I must be perfect to be safe. Mistakes were punished, mocked, or catastrophized. Adult outcome: anxiety, procrastination, fear of exposure, harsh inner critic. 4. Connection requires self-abandonment. Love required silence, obedience, or compliance. Adult outcome: boundary collapse, loss of identity in relationships, chronic emptiness. None of these are character flaws. They are successful childhood survival programs running in adult environments. Insight does not erase scripts, because scripts are not beliefs. They are state-dependent nervous system responses. You may intellectually know, you deserve rest. You are safe now. You are not a child anymore. But under stress, your body does not consult logic. It consults history. The nervous system asks, what worked before? And it replays the script, faster than conscious thought. This is why willpower fails. This is why affirmations collapse under pressure. This is why people say, "I don't know why I reacted that way." The script acted through them. The most dangerous thing about childhood scripts is not pain. It is normalization. When a pattern is all you have ever known, it does not feel wrong. It feels familiar. And familiarity is often mistaken for truth. This is why people re-enter toxic relationships, sabotage stability, fear peace, feel empty when chaos ends. Because peace has no script yet. You are not broken. You are patterned. And patterns can be made visible. But first, they must be named. In the next part, we will examine how the survival brain of the child becomes the prison of the adult, and why intelligence often strengthens the trap instead of escaping it. This is where the real work begins. In Part 1, we exposed a difficult truth. You are not living from free choice as often as you believe. You are living from scripts written before you had words. Now we go deeper. Because to understand why these scripts are so powerful, you must understand who wrote them. Not your conscious mind. Not your adult reasoning. Not even your memory. They were written by the survival brain of a child. And that brain plays by very different rules. The child's nervous system has only one priority. Stay attached. Stay alive. It does not care about self-expression, authenticity, truth, fairness. Those are adult luxuries. A child depends on caregivers for food, shelter, protection, emotional regulation, meaning. So the child's brain becomes a pattern-detecting machine. It constantly scans for what brings closeness, what causes withdrawal, what triggers anger, what restores calm. And once it finds a pattern that works, even if it hurts, it locks it in. Because consistency, not kindness, equals safety to a child. When something goes wrong, the child faces two possible explanations. My caregiver is unsafe, unreliable, or limited. I am the problem. Only one of these allows the child to survive emotionally. If the caregiver is unsafe, the world becomes terrifying. If the child is the problem, the world remains controllable. So the child chooses option 2. This is not weakness. It is intelligence. Self-blame creates the illusion of control. If I change, love returns. This is how shame becomes adaptive. And once shame becomes adaptive, it becomes invisible. Here is where most people misunderstand trauma and conditioning. The child does not store experiences as stories. The child stores experiences as states. Muscle tension, breathing patterns, heart rate, emotional readiness, hypervigilance or shutdown. This is why you may not remember anything bad happening and still react as if danger is everywhere. Your body remembers what your mind cannot narrate. The survival brain does not speak language. It speaks sensation. Highly intelligent children often become highly adapted adults. They learn to anticipate moods, manage environments, predict reactions, prevent conflict before it happens. From the outside, they look mature, capable, responsible. Inside, they are exhausted. Because intelligence did not free them. It refined the script. They didn't escape survival. They optimized it. Not all survival responses look dramatic. Some look calm, quiet, responsible, nice. But beneath that calm is often freeze. Freeze is the nervous system's response when fight is unsafe, flight is impossible, attachment must be preserved. Freeze becomes overthinking, indecision, emotional numbness, chronic fatigue. I don't know what I want. And because freeze is subtle, it is rarely identified. It is mislabeled as personality. The survival brain does not track time. It does not know. You are older now. You have options. You can leave. You can say no. It only knows what worked before. So when stress appears, it reactivates the same responses, even if they now cost you intimacy, creativity, or peace. This is why people say, I know better, but I still react the same way. Knowledge lives in the cortex. Survival lives in the body. Once you see these patterns, a new danger appears. Self-judgment. People say, why am I like this? I should be over this by now. What's wrong with me? But self-judgment is just the script turning inward again. The same mechanism that once protected you now punishes you for surviving too well. Compassion is not indulgence. It is accuracy. You did not choose your survival brain, but you can learn to recognize when it is driving. And recognition is the first interruption. In the next part, we will examine how love itself becomes conditional, and how many adults spend their entire lives trying to earn what was once withheld. This is not about blaming the past. It is about understanding the system that shaped you. Every child asks the same silent question. What do I have to do to be loved? The answer to that question becomes the foundation of self-worth. Not what caregivers say, not what they intend, but what their behavior teaches, repeatedly, consistently, and without explanation. This is how love stops being felt as safety and starts being felt as something to be earned. Children do not understand abstraction. They understand patterns. When affection appears after achievement, when warmth follows obedience, when closeness is restored after compliance, the child learns a rule. Love is conditional, not because parents are cruel, but because emotional availability is inconsistent. The child adapts by becoming whatever restores connection fastest. And over time, that adaptation becomes identity. Most conditional love environments teach one or more of these rules. 1. Be useful. Worth equals productivity, helpfulness, or emotional labor. Adult manifestation. Chronic overgiving. Difficulty resting. Guilt when doing nothing. Relationships built on service, not reciprocity. 2. Be easy. Worth equals low emotional cost. Adult manifestation. Suppressing needs. Avoiding conflict. I'm fine as a reflex. Explosive resentment later. 3. Be impressive. Worth equals achievement or image. Adult manifestation. Anxiety around failure. Fear of being seen without success. Identity collapse during setbacks. None of these are about love. They are about regulation. When love is unpredictable, fear becomes embedded inside attachment. The child does not feel, I am loved. The child feels, I must not lose this. So closeness is accompanied by tension. Approval brings relief, not joy. Praise brings pressure, not peace. This is why some adults feel anxious when things are going well. Stability feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels unsafe. In adulthood, conditional worth scripts resurface in predictable ways. People are drawn to emotionally unavailable partners, relationships that require proving, dynamics where love must be earned, not because they enjoy suffering, but because their nervous system recognizes the rules. Healthy love feels foreign at first. It does not activate the same intensity, and intensity is often mistaken for chemistry. When love is conditional, the mind keeps score. How much have I given? How much have I tolerated? When will it be my turn? This internal accounting creates resentment, emotional withdrawal, passive tests of loyalty, silent contracts no one agreed to. And when those contracts are violated, the pain feels disproportionate, because it is not just the present being threatened. It is the original wound. People raised on conditional worth often struggle with self-love language. Just accept yourself feels hollow, because the nervous system responds. For what purpose? Love, to the conditioned mind, is functional. It must be earned, maintained, justified. Unconditional acceptance feels unsafe, like a rule violation. So the person defaults back to performance. The goal is not to blame caregivers. Most were repeating scripts they never examined. The goal is to see the system clearly. Because once you see how fear hid inside love, how worth became transactional, how performance replaced presence, you can stop mistaking survival for desire. You are not asking for too much. You are asking at the wrong time, from people who could only love conditionally. In the next part, we will explore the roles children are assigned, and how many adults never realize they are still performing on a stage they never auditioned for. Before you developed a personality, before preferences felt like choices, before identity had language, you were assigned a role. Not formally, not consciously, but repeatedly. And once a role stabilizes a family system, it becomes difficult, sometimes dangerous, to step out of it. This is how children learn not who they are, but who they are allowed to be. Every family is an emotional system. When stress enters that system, conflict, instability, emotional immaturity, the system compensates. Children become part of that compensation. Roles emerge to reduce tension, redirect conflict, Maintain appearances. Regulate adult emotions. The child does not volunteer. The child is selected based on temperament, timing, and vulnerability. And once a role works, it is reinforced. Point 1. The responsible one. The child who grows up too fast. They sense instability and step in. Adult pattern. Hyperindependence. Difficulty asking for help. Chronic exhaustion. Fear of relying on others. They were praised for being mature. But maturity was survival. 2. The peacemaker. The emotional buffer. They smooth conflicts, anticipate moods, keep everyone calm. Adult pattern. Conflict avoidance. Emotional invisibility. Anxiety in emotionally charged spaces. Resentment with no outlet. Peace was purchased with self-erasure. 3. The achiever. The proof that everything is fine. They succeed so the family can feel okay. Adult pattern. Identity tied to performance. Shame around failure. Panic during rest. Feeling empty after achievement. Success becomes a requirement, not a choice. 4. The invisible one. The child who needs little and asks for nothing. Adult pattern. Emotional numbness. Difficulty identifying needs. Feeling unseen even in relationships. Isolation masked as independence. They survived by disappearing. 5. The rebel or scapegoat. The one who carries the system's unspoken anger. Adult pattern. Authority conflict. Self-sabotage. Chronic guilt. Identity built around opposition. They expressed what others could not. And paid the price. Roles form early. Earlier than conscious memory. Earlier than self-reflection. So they don't feel like behaviors. They feel like truths. I'm just the responsible one. I've always been independent. I don't need much. I'm bad at relationships. But what feels like nature is often adaptation. The role worked. So the nervous system kept it. Children remain loyal to roles long after they stop being useful. Because breaking the role once threatened belonging. So even in adulthood, the responsible one overfunctions. The peacemaker absorbs emotional labor. The achiever chases validation. The invisible one stays unseen. The rebel fights battles that are no longer present. Loyalty becomes self-betrayal. But it feels like safety. When you step out of a role, something uncomfortable happens. Others react. They feel destabilized. Because your role was regulating them. So you may hear, "You've changed. You're being selfish. This isn't like you." The nervous system hears, belonging is at risk, and retreats back into the role. Not because you're weak. Because your body remembers the cost of exile. Letting go of a role creates grief. Not just for what happened, but for what you never got. Who you were never allowed to be. Needs that were postponed indefinitely. This grief is often mistaken for regression. But it is integration. You cannot reclaim yourself without mourning the adaptation. You were never meant to perform one role forever. You were meant to grow. In the next part, we will explore a quieter wound, emotional neglect and silent trauma, and why the absence of harm can be as shaping as harm itself. When people think of childhood trauma, they imagine events. Yelling, violence, abandonment, chaos. But one of the most powerful forms of trauma leaves no visible memory. Nothing happened. And that is exactly the problem. This is the trauma of emotional absence. What was not said, not mirrored, not protected, not noticed. This is silent trauma. Emotional neglect is not abuse. It is not always intentional. It is the consistent failure to respond to a child's inner world. The child may be fed, clothed, educated, kept physically safe, but emotionally alone. No one asks, "How are you feeling? What does this mean to you? What do you need right now?" So the child learns something subtle and devastating. My inner world does not matter. Neglect leaves no bruises, no stories that sound dramatic. So the adult says, "My childhood was fine. Others had it worse. I shouldn't complain. But the nervous system tells a different story. It shows up as chronic emptiness, difficulty naming emotions, feeling disconnected from self, low-grade anxiety with no clear cause. Because trauma is not defined by what happened. It is defined by what the nervous system could not process alone. When emotional bids go unanswered, children adapt. They stop signaling. They cry less. They ask less. They want less. Not because they need less, but because needing feels pointless. This is not resilience. This is withdrawal. And withdrawal, when rewarded with less tension or more approval, becomes permanent. Adults shaped by emotional neglect often say, "I'm low maintenance. I don't need much. I'm independent." But independence here is not freedom. It is self-containment. Needs feel foreign. Dependence feels unsafe. Receiving feels uncomfortable. So relationships stay shallow, not because of fear of closeness, but because closeness was never modeled. When a child is emotionally unseen, worth becomes abstract. There is no internal sense of, "I matter because I exist." So worth must be inferred indirectly, through achievement, utility, being needed, being impressive. And even then, it never fully lands. Because recognition without attunement does not regulate the nervous system. Children who were not guided through emotions never learned regulation. So, emotions remain unintegrated. In adulthood, feelings may appear suddenly, feel too intense, lead to shutdown, be avoided entirely. This is not emotional immaturity. It is emotional underdevelopment. No one taught the system how to metabolize feelings safely. Naming emotional neglect often brings delayed grief. Not for events, but for the comfort that never came, the guidance that was missing, the version of self that might have developed with support. This grief can feel disloyal. But truth is not betrayal. It is clarity. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much. You are asking for what every nervous system requires to develop fully. In the next part, we will explore the inner parent, the voice that replaced the guidance you never received, and how it continues to shape your decisions, shame, and self-talk. Even when parents are no longer present, their voices often are. Not as memories, not as quotations, but as tone. The tone that corrects you, the tone that warns you, the tone that shames you for resting, the tone that questions whether you are enough. This is the inner parent, and it speaks more often than you realize. Children internalize caregivers not to remember them, but to survive without them. When guidance is inconsistent, critical, or absent, the child creates an internal regulator. This internal voice anticipates punishment, enforces rules, maintains order, prevents rejection. It is not malicious. It is protective. But it is outdated. The inner parent forms before self-awareness. So it does not feel external. It feels like truth. I should be doing more. That was stupid. Don't get your hopes up. Rest is laziness. Because it arrived early. It feels original. But it is learned. And what is learned can be unlearned. The critic uses shame to enforce improvement. Adult impact. Chronic self-doubt. Fear of mistakes. Difficulty enjoying success. The anxious monitor scans for danger constantly. Adult impact. Overthinking. Anticipatory anxiety. Difficulty relaxing. The dismissive voice minimizes emotions. Adult impact. Emotional suppression. Difficulty asking for help. Disconnection from feelings. The perfectionist demands flawlessness. Adult impact. Burnout. Procrastination. Never feeling done. Each voice once served a purpose. None are required now. Many people try to fight the inner parent. They argue with it, suppress it, replace it with affirmations. This fails, because the inner parent is not an enemy. It is a protector. And protectors get louder when threatened. Change requires understanding, not suppression. the inner parent shapes what risks you take, what boundaries you set, what rest you allow, what success feels safe. It decides when enough is enough, when you can stop, when you must push. So many adults are exhausted not by life, but by the constant internal supervision. When unexamined, the inner parent confuses discipline with punishment, mistakes pressure for motivation, uses fear to enforce compliance. Over time, this erodes creativity, self-trust, joy, emotional safety. The system stays productive, but the person feels empty. The first step is not to remove the voice. It is to recognize, this is not my adult self speaking. Differentiation creates space, and space allows choice. You are not required to obey every internal command. Awareness weakens automation. The inner parent was never meant to lead your life. It was meant to protect a child. In the next part, we will explore repetition compulsion. Why people unconsciously recreate painful patterns, even when they know better. You promised yourself it would be different this time. A different relationship, a different job, a different environment. And yet, somehow, the ending feels familiar. Different faces, same emotional outcome. This is not coincidence. This is repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion is not self-sabotage. It is the nervous system attempting to complete something unresolved. The system returns to familiar dynamics not because they are pleasant, but because they are known. Known feels safer than unknown, even when it hurts. The body chooses predictability over peace. At an unconscious level, repetition carries hope. This time, it will end differently. This time, I'll get the love. This time, I'll be chosen. The nervous system believes that if it re-enters the same emotional landscape, it might finally achieve resolution. But the environment changes. The internal script does not. So the ending repeats. Many people can name their pattern. I always choose unavailable partners. I always overwork and burn out. I always get overlooked. Yet knowing the pattern does not stop it. Because repetition is not cognitive. It is somatic. It lives in body tension, emotional expectation, attachment wiring. You cannot think your way out of a body-based program. Repetition often reenacts early dynamics. Trying to earn love from someone distant. Proving worth to authority figures. Staying loyal to people who cannot reciprocate. Not because the adult enjoys pain, but because the child inside still hopes. Hope keeps the pattern alive. Healthy development requires rupture and repair. Conflict followed by resolution. Distress followed by soothing. When repair never came, the system stayed open. Unfinished. Repetition is the system saying, this still needs closure. But closure cannot come from the same structure that created the wound. The body recognizes emotional landscapes faster than the mind. It feels drawn to certain tones of voice, familiar emotional distances, known patterns of attention and neglect. Attraction is often recognition, not compatibility. And recognition pulls you back into the same story. Interruption does not begin with avoidance. It begins with noticing the state. What does this dynamic activate in my body? What am I trying to resolve? Whose approval am I seeking? This shifts the system from compulsion to choice. Choice is impossible without awareness. You are not stuck because you lack insight. You are stuck because your nervous system learned that repetition equals survival. In the next part, we will examine attachment scripts in adult love, and why intimacy can feel both necessary and terrifying at the same time. Love is supposed to feel safe. Yet for many adults, intimacy feels activating, destabilizing, or exhausting. They want closeness. They fear closeness. They pursue and withdraw, sometimes in the same conversation. This contradiction is not confusion. It is an attachment script running automatically. Attachment does not begin as emotion. It begins as regulation. The child learns how closeness feels in the body, what distance signals, whether connection calms or alarms the nervous system. These sensations become templates. So in adulthood, love is not evaluated rationally. It is evaluated somatically. Do I feel activated or soothed? Do I feel familiar or foreign? And familiarity often wins. Anxious attachment forms when connection is inconsistent. Sometimes present, sometimes withdrawn. The child learns. Closeness must be chaste. Adult patterns. Hyperfocus on partners. Fear of abandonment. Overinterpretation of signals. Emotional highs and lows tied to availability. Love feels urgent. Not because the partner is special, but because loss feels catastrophic. Avoidant attachment forms when closeness overwhelms or invades. The child learns. Distance equals safety. Adult patterns. Discomfort with dependency. Emotional shutdown during conflict. Strong need for autonomy. Minimizing relationship importance. Love feels suffocating. Not because the partner is demanding, but because closeness once meant loss of self. Disorganized attachment forms when the source of comfort is also the source of fear. The nervous system learns. Approach and escape simultaneously. Adult patterns. Intense attraction followed by withdrawal. Push-pull dynamics. Confusion around desire. High emotional volatility. Love feels chaotic. Because safety and danger are intertwined. Chemistry is often nervous system activation. Not compatibility. Not alignment. Not emotional maturity. High chemistry frequently signals familiar emotional tension. Unresolved attachment wounds. Recognition of an old pattern. Calm can feel boring to an activated system. Because calm was never part of the original script. Attachment patterns often pair predictably. Anxious pursues. Avoidant distances. Each confirms the other's fear. One says, "See, I'm not enough." The other says, "See, closeness is dangerous." The relationship becomes a reenactment, not a connection. Secure attachment is not personality. It is a regulated state. It develops through consistent responsiveness, emotional repair, nervous system co-regulation. Many adults were never shown this. So security must be learned later. Slowly, consciously, and somatically. You are not bad at love. You are loyal to an attachment map drawn before you could choose. In the next part, we will explore money, power, and authority conditioning, and how early dynamics with control shape ambition, fear, and success.